Hi everyone, you're listening to The Home Within, and we're gonna have a short German intro, so if you don't speak German, please skip ahead. Falls du kein Englisch sprichst, kannst du diese Folge auch bei YouTube anhören. Ich packe einfach einen Link in die Shownotes, da sind dann deutsche Untertitel. Und ich bin mega excited, heute einen ganz besonderen Gast zu haben, und zwar Karden Rabin. Und durch ihn habe ich diese ganze Nervensystemarbeit gefunden und dadurch auch voll viel Heilung gefunden. Und ich habe ihn gefragt, ob er in meinen Podcast kommen würde, und er hat ja gesagt, und ich freue mich mega doll. Und er ist Mitbegründer von Somia oder Somia International und von dem Heal-Programm, was ich auch ganz toll finde. Ich packe da auch den Link in die Shownotes. Es ist ein Nervensystem, Online-Kurs, let's say. Und er ist ein Somatic Experiencing practitioner, also das ist sozusagen eine Therapieform, die mit dem Nervensystem zusammenarbeitet und um Trauma zu heilen und solche Sachen. Und Karden hat sich eben auf die Behandlung von nervensystembedingten Erkrankungen spezialisiert und ist Experte auf dem Gebiet Stress und Trauma und Physiologie und solche Sachen. Und es ist mega, mega spannend, was er alles zu sagen hat. Ich finde, er weiß extrem viel. Sein Instagram ist auch super, super toll für das ganze Wissen zum Nervensystem und Trauma und solche Sachen. @Karden Rabin. Ich packe das natürlich alles in die Shownotes. Und bevor es losgeht, die Cocoon Membership, falls du es noch nicht gehört hast, ist jetzt veröffentlicht und ihr könnt euch anmelden. Ich werde auch einen Link in die Shownotes packen. Es ist so eine Videobibliothek mit ganz vielen Videos zum Mitmachen, um im Alltag eben so mehr Nervensystemregulation zu bekommen, um Stress zu reduzieren, um die eigenen Emotionen zu verarbeiten und sich so ein bisschen geborgener mit den ganzen, in dieser herausfordernden Welt so zu fühlen. Und falls du erstmal so ein bisschen reinschnuppern willst, gibt es auch noch einen Workshop am 26.09. Da werden wir eben über das Thema Selbstkritik und Überforderung und sowas sprechen, und ich werde auch so ein paar somatische Übungen euch zeigen, die mir da immer total helfen, in diesen Momenten mich eben wieder zu fangen und mich regulierter zu fühlen. Und ich wünsche euch jetzt ganz, ganz viel Spaß bei der Folge. Hi, Karden. I'm so excited that you're joining me today for this episode. Thank you for doing this.
Hi, Miriam. Same here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So you're the co-founder of Somia International with your business partner, Jenn Mann. And I found you through doing the CFS school back in the day, and now it's called Heal Program. But I did that and I learned so much from that program. So I really wanted to talk to you. And I found my own passion through that program in nervous system work and somatic work. And I'm now studying all this, and it's just like such an amazing topic. I'm so passionate about it. And I read your book. You're an co-author of The Secret Language of the Body. And I just have to say, I read that book, and I've read a lot of self-help books in my time. And this one just really hits the nail on its head. Is that how you say it?
That's how we say it. And it's you're filling my heart. You're filling my heart. You're also filling my ego a little bit, which is kind of nice. So thank you.
I mean, the ego is important too, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, but I really recommend it to everyone who has a nervous system to read that book, because I think it's not just like relevant for people who want to like heal their nervous system or regulate their nervous system, but also for everyone to like understand how they're working as a human. And I just needed to talk to you, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Just as a little bit, and I'm going to shut up in a second, but just as a little backstory about myself, for a long time, I felt like there was something wrong with me, as I think a lot of people feel like. And I had like so many chronic symptoms. Nobody could explain them to me. So much anxiety. And then through nervous system work, I really found the answer that I was looking for. And I don't say this lightly, because I've tried everything.
Wow, Miriam.
And
wow.
And I knew about trauma, but when I found your work, I was like, I can finally do something about it. So my question is now to you. How did you find this work? How did you stumble upon all this? What's your story?
Pain, curiosity, dogged determination, blind luck, and some natural talent. Let's throw that in there too. And so it's interesting. I often think that my journey into this work started in response to the terrible chronic pain that I experienced, and that is the kind of the locus of where the absolute need to figure this out came from, and where the first forays into true healing through nervous system techniques happened. But like a lot of folks who will talk about how, they got long COVID or they got CFS, that was their crash. One could say that like my low back pain was my crash. When they look back, they're like, whoa, I've had quite the trail of mind body symptoms and disorders.
Yeah.
And during childhood, I got acute asthma out of nowhere at the age of 6. And I was hospitalized on numerous occasions throughout my childhood. I had a couple of near-death asthma attack experiences. But again, by the way, all that was water under the bridge. Didn't clock that as something important or significant in my life.
Yeah.
Another thing that I only realized in a lot of retrospect as I got more into this work is I would wake up in the middle of the night in so much pain and fear, and I'd run upstairs and I'd say to my mom that the static from the television was inside my head. There's now a name for that, Miriam. It's called visual snow. It's actually, they have a name for it now. But can you imagine a 7-year-old just in terror and pain running up to his mother saying the static from the TV is in my head?
Yeah.
Both cranial migraines as well as something called abdominal migraines, where I would vomit outside the window of the bus on the way home from school. Chronic pain later in high school, but in my wrists and not my back. And I grew up in the house of a woman who took 12 Percocets, which are opioids a day, to treat her chronic back pain, but to treat a lot more than that. She was medicated on a lot of different things. She smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. My parents were divorced. It was a rough, in so many senses, I was in a totally fine upper middle class upbringing in suburban America. And in many ways, I had shelter and I had food. And in certain forms, I had nourishment from my parents, but just like pervasive neglect and lack of predictability and seismic levels of loneliness.
Yeah.
So I didn't know any of that. I just got through it. And what I realized not too long ago, Miriam, is I hated being in the house that I grew up. Well, I knew that. I hated it. And I remember the couple months before finally going away to college, I had insomnia. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't wait to go. I didn't associate it so much with not wanting to be where I was, but wanting to be where I was going. And a remarkable thing is I got to college on the absolutely terrible and uncomfortable mattress that was in my dorm room. And I slept like a fucking baby, Miriam. I slept better than I had in years. And that also formed essentially a repressive psychological mind-body barrier to everything that happened before then. And I share this now because I don't know if anyone can relate. I'm assuming they can, that like if you really look at your childhood, you'll realize that there was probably a point, and it may have had to do with a transition, like leaving home, going to college, where you blessedly shut the door on what was. And you got this chance at a new life, at a new way of being, not being in that environment.
Yeah.
And that works for a while. But what you shut the door on didn't go away. It came with you. Also, Miriam, now it feels abandoned, because not only was it abandoned by your parents in that purgatory of whatever was going on in your childhood, but now your adult self abandoned your child self, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it did it unconsciously. It was just like, oh, I'm this is the new me. I'm an independent adult now, thank God. So there's some really OG origins for you there, Miriam. But the direct trajectory to this work was after college, I actually followed this love of the body and body work and massage therapy. I just loved it. There was something wonderful about working with my hands, about being really present with other people. It was this antidote to the amount of time, even at 20. And I didn't know any of this stuff. I was like, I'm way too mental. I'm in my head all the time. And I could feel and recognize the gift and the grace of working with my hands with other people and how that got me out of the place that I was stuck. So I was like, found this somatic option that, I guess I just followed it. And I learned a lot at massage therapy school. I learned a lot from immersing myself in yoga and tons of trainings from cranial sacral to structural integration. And what I did for the first 10 years of my career was, if I can get someone's bones, fascia, and muscles to be aligned and moving correctly, everything should be fine. They should be in perfect health.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be in pain anymore, right? They shouldn't be getting those migraines. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, no matter how well someone fit the mold or did the exercises or I applied the techniques. And at the same time, my low back pain, which started in my early 20s, my quote unquote back would go out really badly. And then it would get better over time. I'd find like new exercises, new core work, new ways of walking that would seem to manage it for a bit. But then something would happen, it would go out again, and it would be it got worse each time. Despite, and I can say this because this was my career, despite throwing the neuromuscular and functional movement and acupuncture and osteopathy and chiropractic kitchen sink at it. And it was in the midst of my most acute bout of back pain ever, that was lasting for months and months and months and months and months, that I found a book on my friend's shelf, which was John Sarno's Healing Back Pain. And Sarno was a forefather in this movement. His theories on why our work works are antiquated, and really some of it doesn't hold up, but it doesn't matter. The practicalities of his methods actually still are an important component of lots of mind-body healing, from IBS and fibro to pain. And this is where I say blind luck. That book found me, Miriam. It's right here. It's right here. It's this skinny. And this is how I found it, on its side like this. You know, it's as thick as my thumb. Like, this is a book so easy to gloss over. And I do like to say, speaking of ego, that when I saw that book on my friend's shelf, I gave it the biggest eye roll ever, Miriam. Like, I was like, how could this little book possibly have anything in it that I don't already know, that I haven't already tried, that I'm not already an expert of? And thank God, luck and my dharma and my intuition, and the fact that I had to go to the bathroom. I had to go to the bathroom, so I needed something to read because I didn't want to be bored. Overcame my ego. I grabbed the book and I started reading it. And for the first time ever, I was introduced to the idea that personality types and emotional repression are critical components of chronic pain.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. It fit like a glove. And I was also one of the happy recipients of what's known in the space as the book cure. I read the book, and for about 3 months, I had this exceptional vanishing of my pain. Can you believe that? That's a book. Because of how powerful, well, one, how the brain is the source of all chronic pain in the body and nervous system dysregulation. And so that when you work with something through the mind, you can get such improvements. Now, they didn't last. And that's why SOMIA and CFS School, and now the HEAL program and the book, The Secret Language of the Body, and trauma and somatics. And there are so many other components of this work than I started with. But that's how it all began.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a relatable story, because I feel like everybody has this one thing they can't get rid of, or it's like they get rid of it and then another thing pops up. And I think what I observe and what I feel like is very present in our world nowadays is this thing that, you know, our daily life is kind of designed in the way that we repress a lot, or that we just kind of like go from one screen to the other and kind of don't really notice what's going on within ourselves. And I guess, like, yeah, two questions. What is mental health through the lens of nervous system work? And also the other thing that I would love to talk to you about is, like, I feel like so much of our worldview is like looking at chronic illnesses or symptoms or personality traits, like, or not personality traits, but like coping mechanisms like anxiety, depression, and perfectionism, and all these things, that they all have something in common with these like chronic symptoms and all that stuff. And just kind of, I guess, like, when you look at it from a nervous system perspective, at least that's what I did. I was like, shit, everything makes sense. It's like, oh, so I guess like chronic pain isn't so different from, some other like anxiety disorder or like all these things. Like it's all kind of, it has a similar like root, or like, it's often rooted in trauma, nervous system dysregulation, and all that stuff. So I think it's just so eye-opening to look at it from this perspective and to see how that all like connects, and that it doesn't all need a different approach. I mean, I feel like there is so many things that are so beneficial for different people, and I don't feel like there is one solution that is final for everybody, because it's such an individual process, right? But I feel like, yeah, it all makes sense when you look at it through the nervous system.
Oh, it sure does. Let's see if we can do the impossible. And we answer those questions, especially the first one. I'll get to both, but the first one's at the top of my mind. Weave it all together in a digestible way.
Yeah.
All right. So I said dogged determination about how I got here. I'm always looking, people call it roots, origins. I have a different phrase. I'm looking for the physics of how something works, the laws of the universe. Paradoxically, right? And if we go into physics for a moment, Newtonian physics wonderfully and reliably explains most of the universe down to until we get to a subatomic level, right? So we actually literally we've identified the laws that explain the cosmos and the planets so well that we can use those laws to know exactly how to shoot a satellite to Mars. It's just remarkable. Like what we can do. We can predict anything and it's consistent.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing about those laws. The laws, once discovered, are relatively simple. But then how the laws can create everything from nebulas to black holes to solar systems to suns and planets, the manifestation of those laws are wildly complex. Does that follow?
Yeah.
It is the same for human beings right now. And it's both a radically exciting time, it's a radically clarifying time, and it oscillates between simplicity and complexity. So, on the most simple side of things, if we simply take 3 subject matters and go to their physics, we can basically explain everything you just asked. If we look at the polyvagal theory of how the stress and survival response of a human nervous system responds to anything.
Yeah.
Right? Any input into the system from external or internally derived, right? It could be the actual car barreling towards you on the road. It could be your mother being cruel and doing the silent treatment, or it could be your own thought saying, I'm a piece of shit. Always gets filtered and responded to through the hardcore, predictable laws of the polyvagal theory, which we may get to.
Yeah.
Then in the Venn diagram, you have to lay on category number 2, which is attachment theory and attachment dynamics. The attachment theory is very simple stuff, actually. But the way it interacts with the first pair of physics from the polyvagal theory, now we get a little more complicated.
Yeah.
Finally, or not finally, like the third one we'll add is this is a little different than pure attachment theory, which is, and this is actually where there's a big hole in the research in the space, is developmental theory. The gap between where the attachment laws really apply in childhood, pre-puberty, But then what happens from puberty to adulthood? There's a chrysalis there. There's a transformation. There's the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. And there's
Mm-hmm.
serious nervous system and mental and physiological dynamics that are happening there that we don't know about very well yet, by the way. They're actually better explained by myth, archetypes, Jungian stuff, more of the spiritual side of things than they are by modern kind of science-based trauma and developmental studies.
Mm.
And I'll simply say that if those three processes, which when done right, lead to the development of a healthy nervous system and organism, get damaged, hurt, violated by a whole range of attachment injuries, abuse, traumas, or neglect, instead of, if we could think of that as like a tree growing up based on soil, sky, and water, those three dynamics, it's not getting what it needs. And so, like a tree growing on a riverbank, it changes its shape. It like twists itself. And then like it still tries to reach for the sun, right? It's still going for development and adulthood and affection and safety and all that stuff. It's still going for it. But it's forced to writhe and contort and figure out all strange sorts of ways to achieve the outcome that it's evolutionarily and biologically designed to do. The soil, the sky, the air, the water were not prime. And then you're going to get weird roots, a weird trunk, weird branches, weird placement of leaves, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And you're going to get those things in a human being. And your brain and nervous system don't give a damn about the difference between your body, like your heart or your low back pain or interstitial cystitis. It doesn't care whether it's one unified unit with no distinction. So it doesn't care about, it doesn't go, that's one set of problems. And then my anxiety, my OCD, my vigilance, my bipolar. It's not like, oh, I'm giving myself mental and physical disorders. It's just like, no, I'm disordered because of the way that I had to survive and still grow and develop with all of those compromises to the way I was supposed to grow up.
Yeah.
And then it gets stuck. And it repeats those patterns throughout our lives. So I'm going to stop there. I think I went all over the place. Can you help us focus, Miriam?
Yeah, so to just like summarize, I guess, is like things happen in our childhood, and if specific needs aren't met, we develop coping patterns to kind of survive, right? They seem, which I find interesting to look at, some coping patterns or some dysregulations are being appreciated by society, like overworking and kind of being like overly productive, and some, some are celebrated and some are seen as normal and others are pathologized, and then they're like, this is what's wrong with you. I find that sometimes we can be so quick to judge ourselves that, whatever we experience is wrong, or it's not okay. And I think the important thing is just, when you look at it through the nervous system lens, and when you look at it through what has happened to you in your life, and also as an adolescent and all that stuff, and also as a freaking adult, like,
You actually just bought me the space to help me answer what you're asking for even better. Can we just take depression, for example?
Yeah,
right?
sure. Mm-hmm.
So depression is classified as a mental health disorder, right? Or a disease, and it's pathologized. Mm-hmm. And in the old model, it was essentially a biochemical imbalance in your brain.
Yeah.
Let's look at it differently.
Yeah.
Depression is characterized by low mood, pessimistic thoughts, low energy. Depression's the perfect, you're depressed, right? You also then, those are the kind of some of the characteristics, but you also tend to be collapsed a little bit, right? Like if someone is showing it posturally, they're collapsed, their shoulders are rounded, they look a little lackluster, right? Not everyone who's depressed looks like that, by the way. A lot of people have a really good mask for it.
Yeah.
Through the lens of the polyvagal theory, which tells us, that we have this hierarchical order of responding to threat, which is simply summarized as we have our optimal response to low levels of threat, which is the ventral social engagement system. We're mammals. We're going to seek out each other's support and aid, and hopefully I get the support and aid I need, and that's enough, and I return to my brain says we're safe now and lowers the defense mechanisms. Now, if that doesn't work, this is the classic order, by the way. This order can get scrambled all the time depending on all sorts of factors. Now I'm going to escalate into my sympathetic option, my classic fight and actually, even before that, I might do, by the way, some fawning or appeasing. I forgot that. I might try to placate, right? That's the next level up. This is still sort of some like kind of a mutated, almost ventral, like I'm going to make them happy so they don't go away from me. I'm going to see if I can negotiate with them so they don't hurt me more, right? Yeah. And by the way, a lot of people are stuck there for almost ever, like people pleasers and really anxious people. Now, if that doesn't work, my stress level or survival threat goes higher. Now I'm going to go into a fight or flight response characterized by fear or anger or both, and tactics like fighting or running, hiding, yelling. These are all part of that characteristic. By the way, bipolar, right? High energy state. Now, if that doesn't solve my problem, meaning if the result of those actions don't then make my brain feel safe and therefore my body to relax and me to feel okay, I am going to now resort to the oldest parts of our survival hierarchy, which are actually parasympathetic in nature. They are down-regulating in nature, and they are characterized by the possum, the freeze, or the faint response. Perfect example of this is someone who passes out when someone comes to take their blood, right? That vasovagal response of going poof, of just passing out, is the ultimate expression of your brain making a split-second decision that this is terrifying, totally overwhelming. It bypasses ventral, it bypasses appease and fawn, bypasses fight and flight, and it just passes out. You go tonic immobility. Yeah. Which evolutionarily we got from, our ancestors and lizards and stuff. It's like predators aren't interested in dead prey. Yeah. Those are the physics, guys. But in the spectrum of that parasympathetic response all the way down to fainting, freeze, hiding, withdrawal, avoidance, hibernation, torpor, low energy. These are all the things that are in the constellation of that final survival response of the parasympathetic. Depression is a more or less ongoing functional state of being largely in a parasympathetic shutdown survival state. That's now how those of us who are progressed beyond the biochemical model look at it. And in fact, we would argue that the chemical evidence that they're finding in the brain is a result of that polyvagal choice making. And you want to, through the nervous system lens, I want to do all sorts of things to sort of sustainably arousing someone, safely arousing someone, stimulating their sympathetic and their ventral branches and capacities of that polyvagal system to start getting them out of where they're stuck. By the way, you do that, and all the content in the head, the depressive thoughts, the hopelessness, all the cognitive content starts to improve spontaneously, not necessarily completely. That's why we have to work at all, but it starts to improve enormously. Like all of a sudden the world just looks a little brighter and you're a little more optimistic because we worked on the circuitry of this survival system rather than saying, hey, think happier thoughts.
Yeah.
We often say that when the physiology sorts itself out, the content sorts itself out.
Yeah.
Now let's stick with this. Give me a little bit longer, guys. Now we have to bring in that second thing of attachment dynamics, attachment injuries. Your nervous system responds to relational ruptures and threats, abuse and neglect, not being seen, all of the classic stuff that can happen to us as a kid. It responds to those threats with the same polyvagal system that it responds to an oncoming vehicle, a wolf, a murderer, a drought. All right. But it's doing so in a completely unprepared, unmature, undeveloped little child body, and it can't possibly be successful. It can't possibly be successful. And not only that, it's trying to use survival responses to get primary, elemental, biological, and developmental needs met from the two people, the primary attachments, if you usually will, right?
Mm.
That are naturally and implicitly supposed to give it to them without question or without complexity.
Yeah.
So it creates this trap. A child needs the present attention and affection and embodied relationship with their parents more than they need food, water, and shelter.
Mm.
It is the most vital nutrients for the developing mind, brain, heart, soul, identity, mind, everything, all of it.
Yeah.
You're listening. I can't put enough bold exclamation points, underlining of what I just said. When I say I rather my child go without food and water for a few days than without presence, attention, affection, acknowledgement, and being seen, I mean that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when those threats are present, when my mom would not be there, and I felt this, my biology and my nervous system instantly said, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel good. What's wrong?" Right? It's going to use its immature and poorly developed polyvagal system. I might first go sympathetic and have a tantrum or cry, right? Or say me, 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 me. But that doesn't work. She doesn't come. Or I get yelled at.
Yeah.
Now my sympathetic option just got smashed. So now my hardwired survival systems start to get scrambled. Well, that doesn't work. All right. And then I get scraps when I'm a good boy. Ooh, I get my little shots of love when I do that. Well, then I need to organize my whole life around getting those. And I'm going to become anxious and monitor and do anything I can to do that. Or I just get so obliterated that I cry for hours and hours and hours. No one comes to help. This pain doesn't get addressed. And my body says, I can't do this anymore. And it descends into that parasympathetic option. It goes into the apathy. It goes into the it goes into the collapse. It goes into the withdrawal. It goes to the why even bother? Because at least that's a number, pseudo safer place than any of the other ones, than actually feeling the pain of the withdrawal, of feeling the fear and the ineffectiveness of the sympathetic, of demanding it. And then a nervous system that's meant to flow between these states and function beautifully like a tree blowing in the wind gets stuck down there. And then we get depression because of the way the immature body tried to use its polyvagal survival hierarchy to deal with the failure of attachment physics, of attachment nurturing happening.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, you know, and all mental disorders, no matter how severe they get, even like things like multiple personality disorder and things like that, or dissociative identity disorder, those are just radically intense consequences. That, remember how I said the physics of how this stuff actually manifests, from nebulas to black holes? Those are just radically intense consequences based on the same physics going wrong.
Yeah, I find it so interesting because I think a lot of the time, or the, I guess, old way of looking at it is like, oh, you have these negative thoughts or these behaviors and they are the problem. Like the thoughts are the problem, the behaviors are the problem, but actually they're like symptoms. And
Say it again.
the the thoughts or the behaviors are not the problem. They are symptoms of like a nervous system in need. Yeah, and I feel like when, you know, we address these, and I think it's so hard to understand when we've never looked at it that way, that, you know, because we take it personally so easily. It's like I have this thought about criticize, or I criticize myself and therefore I'm bad, so I believe that, right? And it's actually like, if we take a step back and notice like, oh, shit, okay, my nervous system is maybe in some sort of freeze response or whatever. And so how can I like listen to the need that I have? And this is what you talk about in your book a lot, right? And to, yeah, attune to these needs. And I think that really like explains why we don't flourish when we always shout at ourselves or criticize ourselves, or because like that just fuels the sense of danger in the nervous system, right? It's like,
Totally.
um
Totally.
yeah, I think like recognizing that thoughts in itself can be perceived as a threat from the nervous system, I think just like really, like, to me, opened my eyes. And also looking at physical symptoms that are chronic, and like seeing the symptoms not as like, oh shit, this again, but like, oh, okay, what is the need under that? What's going on here? And I think that is just so important to like understand, because otherwise we will always feel like we've done something wrong, right? Because I think a lot of the time I thought like it's my fault that I'm this way that I am, that I don't know, have anxiety or these chronic symptoms or whatever. And the cool thing is that we have like, I think the nervous system work really gives back the agency that we've kind of lost when we are being told like, yeah, this is just a disease and you don't know where it comes from, it's just like in your brain and you just gotta like learn to live with it. And I think that sense of loss of agency, I think, also fuels this sense of survival mode, right? Because the nervous system is like, oh shit, I don't have any choices, I can't do anything about this, it's all hopeless, and then we like shut down even more and stuff.
Totally. I
So
think, we describe that as the nervous system paradox, that the very thing that's trying to protect you just tightens the
yeah,
noose more and more and more around itself,
yeah,
right? It's amazing. It's like one of those animals who is, tied up, right? And is then running itself in a way that tightens the rope, the collar around its own neck. The amazing thing, and I guess the blessing, is that we somehow as humans can, with the right support, see that and start using our own brain to positively influence a dysregulated brain. That's an amazing
yeah,
thing that we can do, right?
yeah,
It's both like crazy and like, why are we designed that way? And it's the way it's done, that
yeah,
we have the capacity for, the fancy word trending, people love it, is metacognition, which is the observing self, that capacity to observe that. But yeah, when you're trapped and when you're in it, that can be really, really, really hard. And what I wrote down while you were talking is like, I think two really big things that start making a change happen, creating the gap, the space that's necessary to start doing it, is when criticism, and this takes some will, it takes some discipline, it takes some determination. When criticism becomes curiosity every time, every
yeah,
time, every time. And when fault becomes responsibility. Curiosity is the heart of awareness. Curiosity is the trick where all of a sudden some of the fire and fuel out of the criticism and fear can start to diminish, and a interest can happen. Curiosity is how learning happens. Curiosity
yeah,
is an act of observation, right? And curiosity is usually unbiased or even kind of excited and compassionate. Those qualities allow you to look for, like, you can have that kind of epiphanal moment where it's like, whoa, there's that awful voice telling me how much I suck again. And if you can go from, I fucking hate that voice, which is part of the cycle, or I'm never going to get away from this voice,
yeah,
right? Which is part of the
yeah,
cycle. One's a sympathetic response, by the way. One's a dorsal shutdown response, but they're both, that's polyvagal showing up in thoughts, by the way, because it's no different up there. You have
yeah,
okay? And all of a sudden you can be like, wait. This is, and I think kind of awe and sort of, what's not oh, hold on, that's a better word. Just a second. Absurdity. Having a little what's the German word for absurd, Miriam?
absurd.
Oh, wonderful. Absurd.
Yeah,
Right?
it's kind of similar.
Right? It's both profound and stupid at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I find a lot of positive benefit from taking time to look at what's going on in my head as absurd. Like, holy crap.
Yeah. It's hilarious
It's
sometimes.
hilarious. Again, another wonderful nervous system state or emotional state to counteract
Yeah.
the volleying between hopelessness and hate, right?
Mm.
Wow. Let's just look at this for a second. Let's look at this hilarious, wild, amazing circus going on in my head that goes nowhere.
Mm.
Why is it doing this? It must be doing it for a reason, and it's not the reasons I keep coming up with. What's under this, right? Curiosity and absurdity becoming the lens of the Victorian era detective, Sherlock, right? Or I don't know why I always go back to the Victorian era, some like Victorian era anthropologist who's observing like, cannibals in their native environment. And instead of going, oh my God, that's terrible, he goes, how fascinating. They eat babies, like that non-judgment, that's just like, how does this system work?
Yeah.
That's a huge way in.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like when we judge ourselves or like our behaviors and stuff like that, nothing can come from that. It's just like, okay, this is done. We know this, done. This is judged. And I feel like when we're curious and kind of think about, oh, in what way is this supposed to like help me, and to like see, okay, this is like a coping mechanism. I think that, I was like, yeah, I think I really understood what was going on in that moment. And also, you once said something, and I don't know if it was where it was, but you said that calm is a secondary state. And I was like, when you said that, I was like, damn. I was like, shit, that's so true. Because the nervous system regulates, right, when it feels safe. So we feel calm. I mean, you can explain this better, but I feel like just like understanding that the dysregulation comes from a place of the nervous system feeling unsafe in whatever way. And I think getting curious about what that is or where that comes from, I think is so valuable. And that when it feels safe, it can feel calm and regulated and all that stuff. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit. And also, how do we show, not tell the nervous system that it's safe, and like how do we instill that sense of safety?
So I love that landed for you, and
It did.
I love that. So
I still think about it.
yeah, so the specific language, as I say, that calm is a dependent state. It's the result of, right? But no, secondary is perfectly good. So people want to just get to calm. And there are ways that I say that I call coercive, repressive, directive ways to make yourself calm, right? An example of that like is, I know that I'm anxious and stressed. I don't know why, or it doesn't even occur to me to ask why. But I'm going to do 10 minutes of breath work, which is not a bad thing to do, to make my nervous system feel better for a little bit and get quote unquote more calm. If that was in the context of public speaking, for example, I'm anxious and nervous before I public speak. If I've done the secret language of the body and Karden and Jenn's work, or real profound nervous system work, I will know that, whoa, I'm experiencing a sympathetic response, extreme anxiety mixed with some shutdown because I'm losing my voice. And this goes back to like the 4 different incidences of profound embarrassment and shame, which are survival threats, folks. Profound embarrassment and shame are perceived by your brain and nervous system as just as bad as a murderer, okay, or a tsunami. Probably worse, and they're inside you.
Yeah.
And so you mount a response. And so the body's not calm because it perceives the situation as freaking dangerous. Now, again, I can use a nervous system modifier, some kind of technique to temporarily impose regulation. But a true victory in this work, true healing in this work, is when work with those overwhelming feelings that cause the survival response, and not only teach your nervous system that it doesn't have to do that anymore, like authentically, but that also rewire it such that it maybe is excited for or thrilled by public speaking. And not only that, it knows in its bones how goddamn good you are at it. And therefore, yeah, you might get a little bit of nerves, that kind of like excitement before the match kind of feeling in your body. But you actually are calm, or you don't feel the need to make yourself calm because you're in a useful, appropriate nervous system and embodied state for the thing at hand. So calm is actually built on being able to be tolerate, comfortable, competent, capable, functional in whatever context you're in. And you become. So that's that. And how do you show that to the body? You know, Miriam, you know from doing our course that we have to teach with words, but almost everything that Jenn and I lead you into has non-verbal goals to it, right? So we use words to describe a visualization, for example, a visualization of yourself either in an area that's relaxing, like the beach. That's more of, that's one style. You know, for me, I'll often try to lead people to a visualization like where they've hiked a mountain and they have a really positive sympathetic experience as opposed to a positive sort of parasympathetic experience. And that visualization cues the nervous system, because it doesn't really know the difference between reality and fantasy, and initiates a state shift towards one place or another. That's visualization. Then as you do our work more, and we really teach you how to once again feel and experience sensations, emotions, noticing the body language of your system. These things reunite you with the richness of the language and the ingredients that are actually driving your nervous system state. That words and thoughts they're so secondary to that.
Yeah.
So this is the other challenge, but it's not an impossible challenge. We've done it with thousands of people, and then our colleagues probably all together have done it with millions of people, to reunite you with your felt senses, which allow you to directly know and then influence your nervous system. And you know what we'll do here, Miriam, because it's not, we don't have the time on the show, but I'll give you the link to the nervous system practice pack that we give away for free at SOMIA, which has a true self practice in it, a polyvagal practice in it. I teach a minor pendulation practice in it. And those will, someone can't help but start to understand what this experience means.
Yeah, I find it so fascinating. I've been studying somatic stress release in the body lab, and to really understand how the human experience is so, first and foremost, a somatic experience, to just really understand that with every emotion there's always a bodily sensation with it, and that kind of shows us how our nervous system interacts with the world and with everything. Like you said in the beginning, it reacts to all the stimuli, to everything around us, right? And it kind of looks around and is like, is this safe? Is this not safe? And reacts based on that, And I just find it so fascinating, because a lot of the times we're so wired to think about everything and to figure out a solution through our thoughts, and process our feelings or whatever through our thoughts by talking about it and stuff like that. And I just find it so yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, when I talk a lot about something, and then I'm like, when does this person's gonna ask me how does that feel in my body and stuff like that? It's become so normal now to look into the body when I'm going through something, and kind of just really holding myself in that and being with that and not dismissing all that, and just really becoming aware of that, all that happens in our body, because I feel like we're so wired to just live in our heads all the time, and to connect with our body again, and to understand what's happening there, I think is such a profound and loving act for like our health and well-being. And I think it's so important and so beautiful too. And
it's the holy grail. It really is. And it's not just the holy grail of healing / fixing. It's the holy grail of living.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle, right?
It's a lifestyle, but it really is analogous to watching the world through television, which is how you do it if you're just in your head all the time, interpreting, or forget most of us not feeling, or just interpreting and analyzing everything, watching the world through a freaking television, or actually walking around and feeling and touching and smelling and tasting and responding and feeling the world through your body by walking around in it. It's that complete, and so it's really hard for people to hear this sort of like on the other side if they're just like suffering.
Yeah.
But not only on the other side of what you're talking about is not suffering anymore. It's just such a richer, vibrant, more colorful depth of experience. Like you don't even know till you know.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking lately. Like, I get all these little like drops of like how much more alive all feels when you're like in tune with your body and the somatic experience. And I think it's just so beautiful. And yeah, there was something I want to say, but now it's like gone. So I guess.
I mean, we got a lot of people are just gonna have to take a while to process what we've been talking about already.
Yeah.
But I just want to acknowledge you. I'm really glad that you're paying your healing forward.
Yeah. Also, the one thing that I wanted to ask you is, how do we find that balance between doing that nervous system work and not getting into the space of like wanting to fix ourselves from a place of like, oh shit, I need to heal this. And I think I remember what I wanted to say is that I think a lot of us are so scared of feeling, especially when we're in that place of like suffering so badly. And I feel like this nervous system and somatic work just like offers this really beautiful and titrated way of like getting into feelings and feeling safe while feeling them, and like feeling little bit by bit, which I think is so important because it can be so overwhelming. I think for a lot of people, for me too, it was like that I was like, oh shit, if I start to feel now, like the box of Pandora or whatever it's called will open and it will never stop. So yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. But yeah, just the last question, like how do we find this balance of not falling into the trap of fixing ourselves? Because I feel like there is this notion that, I think on social media a lot, it's like, just do this one thing and then you will be happy forever and nothing bad will ever happen again. And I think that's, not quite true. So
Yeah, no, it's not true at all. Jesus. Oh my God. All right, tell me how. I mean, ask me how I know. Okay, so pithy things first. The first thing is embrace paradox because it's already all around you. So when we ask for like, how do we not get into obsessive fixing mode, but also stay committed to the work? That seems paradoxical. But like, the people you love the most in your life are the people you hate the most in your life.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like the work that's our dharma and our purpose and that fills us with joy is also the thing that crushes us and makes us feel like we have to surrender or it's too much of a burden. Paradox is everywhere. It's implicit to the human experience, right? Even in development, the clinging and the attachment and the dependence on mom or parent, plus that pull, that drive towards autonomy and independence, competence, and being this individual, right? But the tension between individual and collective. So tension and paradox is everywhere. Just take it seriously, guys, and don't get bent about it. If you hold it and you're a human being, I trust that you can, if you actually embrace this, you can discern and trust a little bit of your intuition that you'll know when you are being over fixated on fixing.
Yeah.
And then you'll know when you've been slacking, when you have not brought the discipline or the attention that you want to bring to the work. You'll know, or ask yourself, which part of this is actually the important bit for me to work on? Is it this part over here with like the fact that I'm still not able to stop eating sugar when I'm stressed? Or is it really this part over here where this relational stress where I avoid conflict? Like, I don't have the capacity for both right now. I'm not going to get obsessed with it. Which one's more meaningful to me at the moment? Like,
Mm.
so embrace paradox, trust your discernment, and know that you will know the difference between obsessive fixating, and the progress and discipline and ongoing components of the work.
Yeah.
And no matter how many times we post this on Instagram, it should have another trend of it because it tends to happen every 3 to 4 months. You've seen like what people think healing is going to be, and it's that straight line.
Mm.
And then people like what it really looks like, and it's like up down lines, and people getting stuck
Yeah.
in like crevasses on their hike, and then
Yeah.
highs and lows, highs and lows, highs and lows. So this is a parallel idea. The only creature on this planet that thinks life is and should be linear as well as their experience is this stupid Homo sapien.
Mm.
It's the only one.
Mm.
It's the only one. And it's logical because we're the ones who we have the capacity for abstract thought and future thinking, and we hate pain. We hate
Yeah.
it in every form,
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
cut to shame to depression to failure to humiliation. We hate it. We are designed to stay away from it, which leads the mind to imagine that that's possible, which is a nice thing to imagine, but it's bullshit and anathema to life. It's also anathema to the beauty and wild power and capacity of your nervous system, which is designed to flow and move up and down. And the health of the nervous system is not defined by its lack of lows or highs. It's defined by its elasticity and
Yeah.
its capacity to go up and down and come back to middle and go up and down and come back to middle. And not only that, this is where the bonus points come in, not only to be able to go up, down, and come back to middle, but that it becomes even more elastic, meaning that it can handle more life, more highs and more lows without shattering.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah.
So aligning yourself with reality and truth rather than imagining a world where you don't feel pain.
Yeah. That's so important. So well said.
And
Yeah.
wicked hot. Sorry, you have no idea what that is because you're German. But out here I live in Massachusetts, near Boston and the shore. There's a particular type of accent and also New England. It's called a New England accent. And they go, instead
Mm-hmm.
of saying wicked hard, they say it's wicked had, wicked had. So if you've got, I'm sure there are German accents all over the country, and you guys
Oh
get to
yeah.
make, yeah. So it is hard. What I'm talking about is hard.
Yeah. It's like getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, I think, is such a important part of it. And I always tell myself, okay, I'm on a healing journey, and whatever happens on that is fine, because it doesn't need to be perfect all the time, because that's not it doesn't work like that, right? It's like it's not going to be all good tomorrow, and it may never be, but that's okay, because like life will be hard, and kind of like we can, like, I always call it increasing the capacity for life. And I think that's what it's all about, right? Because we can be so resilient. Like the nervous system is so beautiful in its capacity to like be resilient and increase the resilience. And I think that's just all that you do in your work. And I think it's beautiful. And I'm so freaking thankful that I found it. Yeah, one day I was just like on Instagram and I was like, another thing. Let's see. And then I tried it. And I was like, shit, this is
Yeah.
legit.
Yeah,
So
the silver lining of social media.
yeah, it's a love-hate relationship, but I think it can bring such good, and I think you're doing such beautiful work, and I'm so thankful for it, and I can only recommend everybody read the book. It's going to come out in German too, right?
Yeah, so it's wonderful. We have it'll be released in German in late 2025. We've already secured translation rights for German, Dutch, Spanish, Czech, and Russian, which is
Yes.
exciting. It's really exciting. So yeah, late 2025, you'll have it in German,
Yeah, that's
which will be
amazing.
here before you know it. We're in late 2024 already.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, I'll buy it for everyone I know. Yeah, I
Thanks,
think
Miriam.
it's just so important, and I'm a fan. And just for everybody, for the German peeps around here, are also like the people that speak English, where can they find your work?
Thank you for asking. So, the best place to follow for almost everything is at Karden Rabin. And then you can also follow at Somia International. These are on Instagram. And then there's somiainternational.com. But the other thing I should mention is that our previous comprehensive nervous system healing program, which was called CFS School, is now redesigned and called Heal. CFS School has a complete German translation. So if there are German speakers who rather do in the native tongue, that's available. And you also get Heal in English as well. So you can bop between both programs. And we hope also probably by the end of 2025 or early 2026 to have Heal completely translated as well. But if someone's looking for to go deep into this work, those are options we have.
It's amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on. It's been so much fun, and I'm so thankful. And yeah, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too. It was a great conversation.
Ich hoffe, euch hat die Folge gefallen. Mir hat es mega, mega Spaß gemacht und ich hoffe, sie hat vielleicht die ein oder andere Frage beantwortet oder neue Impulse gegeben. Und ich packe überall, wo ihr Karden und seine Arbeit finden könnt, in die Shownotes, das Heal-Programm und Somia und die Instagrams und so weiter. Und schau gerne in meiner Membership vorbei, wenn du möchtest. Da gehen wir auch auf diese ganzen Themen ein, über die wir jetzt in der Podcast-Folge gesprochen haben. Und wenn du erstmal reinschnuppern möchtest, dann schau gerne im Workshop vorbei. Der ist kostenlos für alle, die in der Membership sind, aber du kannst auch so teilnehmen. Und ich freue mich auf euch und bis zum nächsten Mal. Fühl dich gedrückt.